The best-selling book Atomic Habits is a bestseller multi-times over for good reason, because it is jam-packed full of little nuggets that can help us transform our lives with the tiniest tweaks and changes. And this book can have implications for so many different people, but today we're going to talk about the top takeaways from the book Atomic Habits that we can apply to ourselves as mums, and more specifically as overwhelmed mums, and even more specifically, if this is you, overwhelmed mums that may have ADHD. I actually do have ADHD. I keep wanting to say I got it this year. I suppose I've had it my whole life. I just found out I had it this year, and the book Atomic Habits has had so much of an impact on me since I read it, and I want to share with you the things that changed my life and things that can change your life too as a busy mum, whether you do or do not have ADHD, because let's face it, mum life is busy and chaotic regardless. If you are new here, hello, I am Rhi. I have a blog, mummyof4.com. I have another YouTube channel where we talk about mum life and organisation and all the things. And obviously you're joining me here on the Real Talk With Rhi podcast. Shout out down in the comments if you're tuning in on YouTube. Introduce yourself, say hi, let me know a little bit about yourself. Good to get to know each other. You can't actually respond directly if you're listening on the podcast, but you can take a little screenshot and let me know that you're listening and tag me over on Instagram, either on my main Mummy of 4 UK account or Real Talk With Rhi podcast account. So with that out of the way, and just to very briefly tell you that this is the second time I'm recording this podcast episode. My camera technology has not been my friend this morning. I recorded the full episode and then my camera did the shutting off thing and it did not save the file to my camera. So let's keep everything crossed. You're actually, listening to this because it's recording. It says it's recording. Let's just keep going with that, shall we? Come on, camera, work with me. Okay, so one of the concepts in the book is this 1% rule. So taking tiny, tiny little things, changing tiny, tiny, minute, atomic, if you will, things in our lives, ultimately, when added up over time, make a massive difference. You won't see any massive differences initially, and this is why habits can be quite difficult to stick to, because we're doing something, don't see any change. But I think it's not about that. It's about changing something small. And by changing something very, very small, it's also very, very manageable. Because if we try and overhaul our entire lives in one go, that's going to be really, really tricky. And we don't want to do things that are going to overwhelm us because we're not going to be able to stick to those things, especially if we have ADHD. I'm just speaking from experience. So, for example, rather than as a mum, if you're like, okay, I need to change my whole routine. I need to change the children's routine. I need to change my routine. I need to declutter every room in the house. You're just going to end up having paralysis by analysis. You're not going to be able to do anything because your list is so big and everything's so overwhelming that you're not going to do any of it. If, however, you're like, okay, I'm going to have one new habit. My new habit this week is going to be the kitchen countertops stay clear. Okay. Because once upon a time in the last house, our kitchen countertops were never clear, and clutter attracted more clutter, and it just felt overwhelming all the time, and staying on top of keeping the house tidy felt overwhelming. So if this week you're just like, okay, the countertops stay clear, you tell your family the countertops stay clear, you declutter any just bits that live on the countertop, because clutter attracts clutter, trust me, the clearer you can keep them, the clearer you're going to be able to keep them, because you put one thing, you and your family put one thing in the middle of a clear countertop, you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that because, I've made a mess now. Whereas if there's already stuff there, people will put more stuff there. They will add to the stuff. I just promise you. So if this week you think, right, I'm going to just have clear countertops in the kitchen, that's going to be my habit. And then next week, once we've all mastered that, we're going to do a clearing the living room every night before bed. Before I go to bed, I'm going to make sure that's clear. And then maybe the next week you're like, okay, I'm going to do a 5-minute tidy before I do the school pickup. Or maybe we're going to get the children to all whip around the playroom and clear the floor every night before they go to bed. Whatever it is, just something small. I'm not talking about emptying every cupboard, scrubbing every corner of your house, because trying to find time to do an entire whole house speed clean, block off the whole day, is really hard to do. However, adding in a habit of doing a power hour, if you can't even find an hour, 5 minutes, microwave minutes, do something while the kettle's boiling, wipe up while the kettle's boiling, run around, stick the laundry on while you're waiting for the microwave to finish. A habit of just putting on a load of laundry every single day. If you can start that habit, that will change your life, because you won't have this build up, this overwhelm of like, oh my goodness, there's so much to do, I'm never going to get through it, because you're doing it every day. But the key is to just change one thing, and then when that becomes natural, then add in something else. Do not try and do too much too soon, because it's a recipe for disaster. Trust me, I know. So the next takeaway from the book is habit stacking. So it's taking something you already do naturally as part of your routine and adding something into it. So for example, if you want to get fitter and you already clean your teeth, let's hope that clean your teeth is something you already do twice a day, and you think, right, okay, I am going to do squats every day while I clean my teeth. Even if that is the only thing you did, that is adding in, I'm not sure how many squats that would add up to. Someone do the calculations for me, let me know down in the comments, but roughly how many squats you'd add into your day. That's going to add up over time. You're going to end up with stronger legs. If you want to listen to more books, read more books, then rather than just banging the radio on when you're in the car, have your audiobook queued up. And then suddenly every time you're driving, you're also listening to books. You're absorbing more of that information. The level of personal development you'll be able to get through if you just listen to books every time you're in the car. And this is what I used to do back when I got massively into personal development books, when I started what I'm doing now, which is YouTube, blog, all that stuff that became my full-time job. My youngest daughter was 7 months old, and I was really starved for time, like really, really starved for time. And I just got in this habit of listening to audiobooks every time I got in the car. And I was ultimately looking for how to be better at business, how to be more productive. Turns out all the books come back to a very similar thing about getting your mindset right. And, but that's a whole other story for a whole other podcast episode. My point is, I was thinking, how am I ever going to absorb this information? I didn't have time to actually carve more time out of my day to sit and read. Yet by tacking on that habit of driving, which I had to do to take my children to school, we lived further away, we weren't close enough to walk at the time. Tacking on that habit of listening to audiobooks while I was driving allowed me to listen to and absorb so much more and really push ahead. I listened to trainings, I listened to things that would help me. I got information I knew I needed while I was doing something else. Which other habits could you stack? So, for example, every time you boil the kettle, you wipe the kitchen surfaces. Do those two things together, and that is habit stacking. If you need to take a certain vitamin, put it next to your evening meal supply. I don't know, put your vitamins next to the salt and pepper. So when you get those out to put them on the table, you're like, oh, also vitamins, I'll have those after dinner. There we go, I need to take those with food. Perfect. Or if you need to take better care of your nails and you, like me, your cuticles go dry, and if they go dry and crusty, you kind of pick them, then you put nail oil next to where you work. So when you sit down to work at your desk, you're like, oh, okay, I'll just put some out on my cuticles. Suddenly, sitting down to work, put that in your cuticles, and you're not going to be picking when you're like absent-mindedly doing things, because you're stacking that habit. Something you already do, tack on something you want to do to go with it. So let me know down in the comments, which habits do you want to pick up? Which habits would you like to be able to pick up? And which habit you already have, you can tack those onto. Apologies if you're listening on the podcast. Obviously, you can't let me know in the comments, but you can definitely DM me or tag me over in stories over on Instagram. So another concept that they have in the book is making things attractive. And a really good example of this, slightly going back to the vitamin one, is vitamins for me. So it's not that taking vitamins is unpleasant, just swallowing, it's just neutral and therefore boring, and therefore doesn't create any excitement, dopamine, so it's likely to slip through the net and get forgotten. However, when I bought gummy vitamins that taste like sweets, every now and again through the day I'm like, oh, I really like something sweet now. I'll have my vitamins. Do you think I've forgotten to take my vitamins since they've been gummy vitamins? I have not. I've remembered that. Did I used to remember to take them when they were boring and flavourless, and I did not remember to take them? I forgot. So making something attractive for you to do is just going to make it so much easier to do. So for example, I tried so many times to do Couch to 5K. I loved the idea of being a runner. I just hated it. I just hated running. I hated everything about it. I'm going to be honest. It just wasn't for me. So it was such a struggle to stick to, and ultimately I didn't stick to it. I tried it over and over and over and didn't stick to it because it was not an attractive way for me to exercise. However, walking, I love. Dancing, things like that, I love. And if you pick a form of movement, of exercise that you enjoy and you look forward to, it's going to be so much easier to stick to that habit than if you pick something that is a chore that feels awful, that feels hard, that feels ugh. So choose things are attractive if you're trying to pick up healthy habits. So you're far more likely to put on a nice hand cream if it smells amazing. If you'll be like, my hand smells so nice. You're going to remember to do that habit of applying hand cream if that's something you need to do. And in the winter, I know I need to. If it smells great, because you're going to be wanting to apply that to get that great smell. If I'm trying to think of another example. Working from home then, for example. I work from home and I don't have a boss. I am my own boss. So the only person making me work is me. So I am more likely to want to come into my office and work. I mean, I do now because it's part of my routine, which is a whole other thing. It's just become natural, and we'll kind of get to that. But making your working environment pleasant and a nice place to be is going to make working more inviting, more attractive. And therefore you're more likely to do it, which is what you want to do. So if my office is covered in clutter and stuff, I'm like, I'll find any excuse to not come in here. Whereas when it's a lovely environment, it's the right temperature, I've got my nice drink with me, I'm going to want to do it more. So as mums, we can pair up our mundane, boring activities that we have to do and make them attractive, like cleaning. Like, okay, I'm going to do cleaning, but I'm also going to listen to my favourite podcast. You could listen to this podcast. You could watch YouTube videos. You could have AirPods in. You could talk to your friends on the phone while you're cleaning. Making it attractive is going to make it so much easier. Designing your environment for success is talked about a lot in the book. And as mums, this is so important. So having things where you need them, for example. So for me, it wasn't until we moved to this house that I implemented a lot of these things, but it took moving to a new house to think, right, I'm really going to think about where we position things, where we place things. And it was only after moving that I realized, wow, I should have done so much of this stuff beforehand. But for me, cleaning, let's take cleaning as an example. Cleaning is not something I enjoy doing, but I do love having a clean house. So while I do not enjoy cleaning, I love the results it gives me. Now, in order to maximize my time as a busy mum, I like to have things where I need them. So I have bathroom cleaning supplies and they live in the bathroom. They live in a cupboard out the way, so they don't have to be seen, but they are where I need them. So if I find I have 5 minutes, if the girls are in the bath, I could have a quick clean around the sink. If I'm getting out of the shower, I could give it a quick wipe round because the stuff is there. There's no barrier to it. There's no I'd have to go and get this stuff. I've got a few minutes. Things are where I need them. Things to clean the kitchen are in the kitchen. So they're not in a different room. All the stuff is there. And skincare, it's a good example. I go through the same amount of skincare. So if I use, one blob of cream a day, I still use one blob of cream a day. But I have one set of it in my bedroom, one set of it in the bathroom. So ultimately, I'll go through the same amount in the long run. But rather than buying one jar and then buying another jar when that runs out, I've got 2 jars on the go. But if I'm in the bathroom or if I'm at my dressing table, I have the stuff there. It's not going to be like, I forgot to do it because it wasn't there. My environment is designed to support the things that I need to do. So in my office, I have things plugged in at all times, chargers and things. I've got things ready. So things are not going flat. I can take the camera straight in my battery, stick it straight in the charger. I'm not running around like, oh gosh, where's my charger? I take the batteries out and they live in the same drawer all the time. They're all in the same place. So if I need to pack them for a trip, I know exactly where they are. And before I did things like this and I just had stuff in various places all over the place, I wasted so much time and it just made my life more difficult. Putting things where you need them and designing your environment for success, because everything is logically where it should be, just greases the wheels of your life. It just removes friction. It makes everything so much easier. Great example of this would be making your children's toy storage accessible so that they can put things away themselves. Now, toys and decluttering, you will see me do lots of videos and things on my main channel, and it can be tedious, but when it's done, it's so good. And honestly, the tidier I can make my children's rooms, the longer the children keep them tidy. The more organised I can make the children's toys and storage, the more likely they are to actually use it and put things away themselves. Ultimately, over time, things deteriorate, more things come into the house, more mess is created, more stuff is brought home from school. And periodically you need to declutter and do big overhauls to kind of reset things. By doing this and making each environment set up for success, to make it easy to put things away, to make it easy to recycle. If you've got the right recycling bins, it's easy to recycle. If you're the kind of family like us that always has runny noses, I have tissue boxes in each room because I'm sick of running from room to room to find tissues. We have neat, tidy tissue boxes that get refilled in each room because that way things are where we need them. And it's easy life is just generally easier when things are set up for success. It's always good, for example, to have a donation bag, a spot to put things that are on the way out of the home. This will save you so much time in actual decluttering, because when you put your hands on things, like for example, I went through the coat cupboard today to hang up the girls' new winter coats, and I realised there were 2 coats in there of Williams that don't fit him. So I've pulled them out. I'm not going to wait to do a declutter to do that. I'm pulling them out now, put them in the bag. I've got a friend who's got 2 sons younger than Will, and I just give the stuff to her. And I've got that stuff ready to go now. I don't have to wait for a time to declutter. That's just a small habit, but because I'm pulling the stuff out and putting it in that one place, because we've got a place of on the way out the house stuff, and the place with that on the way out the house stuff goes. Gosh, my words are getting tangled. Gosh, they are. Okay, the 2-minute rule. They talk about this in Atomic Habits, and when you start a new habit, it should take no more than 2 minutes to do. And then once you start, you may find you happy to continue. So for example, if you just say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to tidy for 2 minutes, then you're not going to be like, oh, I can't be bothered to do that. If you're like, okay, I'm going to take 2 hours, the next 2 hours, I've got to clean for 2 hours, you might be like, oh, I can't even face getting started. If you say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to do this for 2 minutes, and then maybe when you keep going, you'll do another 2 minutes and another 2 minutes, you can build up. And maybe when you're in the flow of it, you'll just keep going, and it's natural to keep going, and you actually end up tidying for an hour, maybe 2. Sometimes, especially if you have ADHD, this I'll just do something for 2 minutes gets you started, and that gives you the initial momentum to allow you to keep going. I can find that the more daunting the task, the more helpful this is, because sometimes if a task feels so overwhelming that you think you've got to do something for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you procrastinate even getting started and nothing gets done at all. And let's face it, even if you just do the 2 minutes and then you stop and you don't keep going, you've done 2 minutes. That's more than you're going to do just staying on the sofa. The next concept they talk about in the book a lot is tracking habits, and there are so many different ways to track habits. You can track habits in your planner, you can track habits using apps, you can just make a note on a piece of paper, but ultimately things that get measured get done. For me, I track a lot using my Apple Watch. I love getting my steps in as a form of exercise because it's easy. You don't have to get changed especially for it. You don't have to go and wash your hair as soon as you finish doing it. It's not like really, really stressful from that point of view. So I like to have little competitions with myself to track how many steps I get done and see if I can get it over a certain level each day. If I was to stop tracking that, I know my step count would go down. It just definitely would, because in the back of my mind, I'm doing it as this little game. I've gamified it, and therefore I'm more likely to do it. Another concept they talk about a lot in the book is this identity-based habits. So if you take my example of running, I was trying to do Couch to 5K. I was trying to learn to run. I was trying to get to this. I was trying and failing ultimately. People that are runners, it's just something that they do. People that are runners will take their running shoes on holiday with them and they will go for a run because it's just something they do. It is part of their identity. Now, I would say that I do identify now as someone that is quite active and someone that gets in their steps. And that is such a different mindset shift from someone that is trying to do something, striving. It kind of, when you're trying and striving to do something, there's this gap between where you are and the thing that you want to get to. And that gap can feel huge and it can feel intimidating. It can feel like you're never going to get there. As soon as you identify as the kind of person that eats healthily, the kind of person that gets in their steps, these habits become part of your identity and something that just comes naturally rather than something that is forced or attempted or tried. And it's just such a different energy behind it, and it will make all the difference in your ability to stick to your new habits. There is a lot of talk in the book about making habits satisfying. So, for example, I know that if I don't hydrate, I get terrible headaches. I'm going to have some water right now. But something that makes my water more satisfying for me, and obviously I know it's personal preference, but I don't like room temperature water. I like it very, very cold. So I have my massive Stanley cup that sits on my desk, which again is stacking my environment for success, because I have the thing I need, my cup full of, of water, where I need it, which is at my desk. So I have the thing I need where I need it. Well done, that's environment set up. But I also make it satisfying by making it cold, which is my preference. And I also add a little bit of this. I'm really into at the moment, Robinson's peach and raspberry squash. It's delicious. So it makes drinking it satisfying because it's delicious. It doesn't really add anything especially nasty to it. I'm still getting the hydration. So therefore, I am hydrating, but it's easier to do because it's a rewarding, satisfying, yummy thing. So other applications we can use for this would be, if I get 10 minutes of tidying done, then I can sit down and have my little scroll on social media. Or if I clean the kitchen, then I'm also going to listen to my podcast while I do it. Or if I do this really boring work, this is one I do. So I have like different types of work I do. I have like really focused work that I just can't have anyone talk to me. I've got to really concentrate. I can't have music on. And then that would be more like editing and stuff, or writing. And then I've got like fiddly work where I've got to just find images for blog posts and links, and it's quite mindless. And that stuff's boring. But if I kind of reward myself by also putting on some mindless trash TV, guilty pleasure show that I'm enjoying at the time, then that makes doing that habit of doing that boring part of my work far more enticing and rewarding. So the book also talks about implementation intentions. And this is how, where, and when you're going to do things. So for me, I know I'm far better off in the mornings. I'm very much, if I eat the frog, I get things done. I'm far more efficient. So I know straight after getting back from doing the school run, if I need to film something, I'm far more switched on and my brain is far more awake. And I'm far better off doing that first thing in the morning. So if I was to come home and then just have like some switched off chilled time, I'd find it so hard to then get going. Whereas I'm already in kind of go mode, having dropped the children off from school. That's my time. I know I can get stuff done. So if you've got stuff that you need to get done, maybe it's tackling a certain room in your house, maybe it's, doing boring tax documents or a specific part of work, something's a bit more challenging. Think, plan and execute the when, the where, the how you're going to do it. Get that in your diary like it's an appointment. You would not be late for an appointment with someone else. You would not be late for hairdressers or the dentist. So do not be late for this, for yourself. Get it in your diary of, right, I am, during this period, for me, I'm filming this podcast. I am writing this blog post. I'm editing this video. And make that non-negotiable, because when you have an appointment, and this is, I think, where personal training and classes do really well in like the fitness space, because that's a habit you're going to stick to because you do not want to let someone down. You've got skin in the game, you stay in the game, like Ian Hamilton. If you have got an appointment for a personal trainer and you've paid for that, you're not going to not do it. So you need to be as committed to your other habits as if you have paid for it, as if you're showing up for someone. So you can get accountability buddies. If that works for you, you can ask a friend to check if you've done something, if that works for you. But ultimately, just get it in your diary and treat it like an appointment and be like, at this time on this day, I'm doing this thing. And that is when I'm doing it. So that is when I'm going for my run, or that is when I am organising this cupboard or whatever. Just get it in your diary and you're far more likely to stick to that habit. And ultimately, something else the book talks about, and I think is really important for mums especially, is having a little bit of self-compassion, not trying to do too much at once. It can be so tempting to see so many different things on social media and trying to implement them all at once. And I'm just here to tell you that that's a recipe for disaster, because if you try and do everything at once, it's so overwhelming, especially if you've got ADHD. You're far less likely to stick to any of it at all. If you just stick to one new thing until that becomes part of your identity, and then when you have not finished doing, but when you are doing that thing to a level where it feels natural, it's just something you do because that's the kind of person you are now, then you move on to the next thing, you're far more likely to stick to it. And then the other kind of level of compassion you really need to have is when life happens, not to go like, oh, well, it's all ruined now, I won't bother. For me, I've always struggled with getting back to routine when the children have been ill, when I'm really overwhelmed with work, when I'm unwell myself. And it can make getting back to things so challenging because you're like, oh, I've broken my streak now. What's the point? And we just need to have compassion with ourselves and just be like, do you know what? Life happens. I am very busy. I'm juggling a lot of things. I'm spinning a lot of plates. And, you know, so maybe I skipped a day. Maybe I didn't eat as healthily as I planned to. Maybe I didn't put laundry on, whatever. Just forgive yourself. Be like, okay, I'm human, having human moments, human things happening, life happening all around me. Take a breath, be kind to myself, and start again tomorrow. And if we can all do that, we're all going to find our habits much easier to stick to. Now, I'd highly recommend this book. If you're anything like me, you're probably far better off with the audiobook because you can multitask. You can listen to it while you're doing the school run, while you're cleaning, while you're doing all the other things. And in fact, that's good habit stacking because you listen to the book while you're doing your other good stuff. So if you want to grab a copy on Audible of this or any other book that they have in their catalogue, but I'd highly recommend this one. If you just go to mummyof4.com, that's mummyoff4.com/audible, that will take you to a link to get you one free audiobook. And even if you cancel before the end of that 30-day free trial, you get to keep that audiobook. So it is a really, really, really good deal. So grab that. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast channel on YouTube. Really helps to support. And if you are listening on the podcast in your ears, rate and review because that really, really helps too. Check out my Patreon for some early release episodes and some early release videos. And there is a free tier in my Patreon. So please do head over there and just join up for some extra bits and pieces from me, and you'll get a little notification when new content goes live. So thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk with Rhi. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.